Okay, so first things first, I just want to talk through a couple things. So we all do things kind of a different way, and that's okay. So hopefully today, my purpose with you guys is hopefully there's one thing that you guys can get out of today that can benefit you in your process. Because we all have different personalities, and we all sell a little differently. But one thing that you'll find in common with some of the top closers is they all have a process in place when they get into a house. They know what they're going to do, they know what they're going to say, they know how they're going to react. And that's where you can really see tons of success. You'll take your sales from down here up to here when you know what your process is. Because if there's no process in place, you can't figure out where you're lacking if you don't know what that process is. So today, hopefully you can identify what your process is, or maybe take some of the good things from my process and apply it into your closes every day. So a couple of things, I want to open it up. Any closers that are really experienced, if you have anything to contribute during the training, please add any of your thoughts that you have. So a couple things that I do when I go up to a customer's house. Every single time, I expect the customer, when I'm walking up to my appointment, I expect them to cancel. And the reason that's a good kind of thought process, in my opinion, is it keeps me on my toes. It keeps me on my A game. So when I'm walking up to the house, I'm not just expecting to take off my shoes and get in the house. I'm expecting them to probably try and cancel with me. And I know that I'm going to have to kind of push my way into the house. So it gets my thoughts right when I'm showing up to the door. Obviously I'm showing up confident, but just expecting they're going to give me a little bit of hassle when I try to get into the house. If they text you, if they call you beforehand, hopefully they didn't even have my information, but if for some reason they did, I don't answer it. I don't text them back, I don't call them, I just show up. Because people, how are you, Jane? People are always going to try and postpone. Even if they're really interested, they talked to you the day before, they liked what you had to say, but they'll always just try to procrastinate. And so if they have a chance to, they're going to try and cancel. But if you can show up, turns out that doctor's appointment that was super important, there wasn't even one. And you get your way in the door, they're the nicest person, and an hour and a half later you're closing. So showing up is super important. Being prepared for them to cancel. Half the time they'll try, and you just find creative ways to work your way in the house. It was a long drive, it's super hot, I took the time to build the proposal, I'll be super fast. Like, those are some of the things you can do to get into the house. But you can't close a deal if you don't try and you don't show up. But so many times we get that text and we're just deflated and we don't show up to the house. So that's number one. Once we get into the house, there's a couple of key points that I'd say. Going and sitting at the table. I think you guys it's clear you guys are already doing that even in your lead setting pitch. So when we don't sit at the table and sometimes you walk in the house and like, hey, why don't you take a seat on my couch? And you're like, seems super comfy, and sometimes we end up taking that route. It's just not a place to do business. It's really hard to do that. It's like trying to sign a deal on the doorstep. You can do it, but it's just a lot harder. And so in sales, we just want to place ourselves in a position where it's just the easiest way for us to move the project forward. So you're getting into the house, you're sitting at the table. How many times by the raise of hands have we sat at the table and we're starting to pitch and the wife's up cooking dinner or doing something with the kids and she's just kind of around but she's not really there?
Yeah.
A lot of time. How many times, Stan, have you been bold enough to request that she comes and sits down?
I usually try to make that invitation.
Yeah.
I know
sometimes it's a little hard.
It's a decision that affects everybody, and
yep.
I figure you probably have to repeat this information,
Yep.
Is there any way we can all sit down and I can go through it with you?
How has it been pretty successful?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to get that done. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's the worst when they're cooking dinner. You're like, crap, we had this appointment. But getting her to sit at the table, however it takes, if you have to sit there and chat for 20 minutes while she finishes up dinner, do what it takes to get both decision makers there. Because if they're not, the chance of closing the deal go down significantly. So I'll bring the spouse in, sit at the table. One of the questions that I ask that's really important is I say, hey, thanks for sitting with me today. What do you guys feel like you need from me to feel confident moving forward with solar today? And I asked that question at the beginning of my pitch. Because how many times have we got done pitching, it went super well, the numbers lined up, everything looked great, and then they're like, okay, thanks. And they're not willing to move forward. You're like, what did I miss here? Everything lined up. What am I missing? and they just didn't get their concern, but you felt like you did.
Can you repeat
and
that?
so-
Can you repeat that question you asked?
Yeah. I say, hey, thanks for sitting with me today. Is there any, what would you need to feel? I say, thanks for sitting with me. What do you guys need to see from me today to feel comfortable moving forward with solar? So what do you guys need from me? It's a very direct question, and half the time they're gonna answer it for you. And half the time they're gonna be like, oh, I'm actually not gonna move forward today. I'm not signing any documents. And that's really good, because it's a gauge, it gauges where they're at, yeah.
What's the typical response that you get? Is it like, oh, is it gonna be like price, or is it gonna be like?
Yeah, price,
depending on,
hey,
like-
I need to save some money.
Mhm.
Hey, I heard a bad experience with the neighbor and when they tried to sell their house. You're gonna get those questions coming up, and then it gets you engaged, it gets them engaged in the conversation, but it also gets their exact concern out. They're like, hey, if I can save, 20% off my bill, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Then crap, I can price this probably a little bit higher. Or if like, hey, I need to see $100 savings, you're like, okay. You can set expectations right from the get-go versus waiting till the end, you drop price and you're like, I'm not saving $100, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question that I ask every single time. So once I do that, I build a little bit of rapport. Obviously, you guys know rapport building is the most important. Somebody's gonna sign with you not because of the price, not because of the product, it's typically because of you. That's why Spence, Dallas, all the seasoned closers in here close so much, because we really know how to build rapport with the client. So my process, I need to update this, so I usually skip through the first page, but let's just assume that does not say Albert. So,
Solar Pros.
my first slide, this is kind of me, my slide. So I talk about me, I say, hey, look, I've been in the industry for 8.5 years. And one thing with Solar Pros and what we try and do is we really want to roll out the red carpet for our clients. There's a lot of solar companies out there, you guys have shopped around 50 times, you told me that. But one thing that I do is I want to make sure you're taken care of. The most important part of the process for most sales companies is getting you to the install. And for us at Solar Pros, it's after install. We need to make sure that you're happy, you're satisfied, because we're not going anywhere. We're in this for the long haul, and if you're not a satisfied customer, it makes my job harder long term. So if you need anything, you reach out to me. And then as we do good business, you can refer me to your friends and your family, and I pay really well for that. So I set the stage that, hey, if you have concerns, questions, after the fact, you're coming to me. You're not gonna call into Sunrun and cancel a project. How many times you get the email and you're like, what the heck, you didn't even call me. Why did you cancel with them? Like, call me. Give me an opportunity to talk through your concerns. So I kind of squash that here. I let them know that as I do good business, that they're gonna refer me clients, which that is a huge part of our business if you're not focusing on that. And I just set the stage for who I am and my company. This is, I obviously sell a lot of Sunrun. So in my presentation, I talk about Sunrun. I say, hey, look, we're in X amount of states. We've got an A+ rating with the BBB. We're a $1 billion company, publicly traded on the stock market. And the coolest part about Sunrun is we're one of the largest customer-based residential solar companies in the market. So when you go with us, you know you're getting taken care of. I go to my next slide. And I talk about, this is kind of my bandwagon slide. So every single time, Spence gave a really good training yesterday on bandwagon. Most people move forward because their neighbors are doing it. This allows me to kind of pull some of that bandwagon into my presentation. So I talk about the costs. I say, hey, look, in the past, most people haven't gone solar because too many upfront costs, they just couldn't qualify for it. Cool thing about our program is there's actually no out-of-pocket cost for you. One thing with us is we actually maintain the system for 25 years. So we're gonna pay you back if the system doesn't perform. We're gonna take care of the system for the entire 25-year term. And all you have to do is buy cheaper power at a fixed cost. And we'll go into details a little later. And the biggest incentive is, obviously you guys in the summertime, your bills are going really high and low in the summertime, but wintertime, our bills all throughout the year are the exact same price. So for the next 25 years, you can predict what your bill's gonna be. And Judy next door, the reason she decided to move forward with us is because she's so tired of those utility bills continuing to climb up. And when we can give her some fixed predictability, it doesn't matter if there's savings today, she knows that in the future, she's gonna be in a much better situation moving forward with Sunrun versus sticking with the utility company and donating all that money. So from here, I build all the pain. So this is my pain slide. So it went from me, my slide, then it went to the Sunrun slide. So we talked about, you know, the validity and who we are, we're in Costco, and then, then it went into the bandwagon slide and why people are doing it, and then building a lot of pain. So this is just like Spence was talking about on the doorstep yesterday. I go into more detail. I say, hey, look, the grid, the infrastructure, it's struggling. Did you guys get that text, you know, a couple months ago? They said stop charging your electric vehicles during peak time. It's because we're just struggling. We don't have enough power to deliver to the home. Have you guys switched over from tier-based plan to peak time or time of use yet? Oh, you have. The reason they're doing that is because their infrastructure, it's old, it's outdated, it needs to get upgraded, and we have a problem nationwide. California has a lot of concentrated energy consumption, but nationwide we have a really big issue. And so the coolest part about our program is instead of shipping all that power from hundreds of miles away, you know, we actually don't generate a lot of our power here in the state. We buy a lot of it out of state, Arizona, Idaho, some of those other places. And it's a very costly way to get power over here to California. And so the reason you see a lot of the solar going up in the area is when we can generate power on site, we can get rid of all of the transmission as well as the delivery fees, and we just build the power plant right on site. So 10, 12 years ago, Sunrun pioneered the program and they said, hey, everyone wants to go solar, everyone wants renewable, but people just don't want to take on the responsibility or take out the debt for it. And so they pioneered a program where we could just build a power plant right on the site, and we just sell the homeowner power directly from that power plant. So, man, it doesn't matter if our panels are in the field next door or if they're on site, we're just the new power provider for your home. Any questions so far? Some make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So I go into the detail and say, hey, look, sun comes out, shines on the panel, it creates electricity, it flows through conduit to step 2, which is the inverter, and that converts the power. Then step 3, we're monitoring on a monthly basis. So if your system ever underperforms, we're actually going to pay you back for lack of production. We want to make sure for the entire 25-year term, we don't want to sell you power and actually not deliver that power that we're selling. Step 4, the coolest part about it is the sun comes out, creates the electricity, and it goes right into your house. So just like we talked about, during peak times, we're going to put this on your south roof plane, your west roof plane. Those are the times where the utility company actually needs all that power. And so if you can produce all your own power during the most expensive times, we're going to be saving some money, right? The most important step to this process, it's actually called net metering. I'm sure you guys are familiar with NEM 3.0, and this is the most important step to solar. We need a place to put all the power that we're generating. And California is in a really weird position right now. We've got about 6 more weeks to be grandfathered into their current way they do things. Now, how it works is most utility companies, they start off by net metering. Once they get too much built out infrastructure with residential rooftop solar, they'll end up starting to change how they're buying power from the utility companies. I was out in Florida in 2021 of November, and there's a utility company out there that was buying another company, and they were building out a 8-stage solar farm. And they were on step 1 of this build out, and they sent out letters to all their customers saying, hey, we're gonna be increasing bills by 17% to help fund this project. And so a lot of people got obviously really interested in solar. They're like, hey, if you're gonna charge me for solar, I'm just gonna do it myself and save some money. And so what happens though, as more people go solar, they have to start changing how they're taking power from residential rooftop solar. So California's been blessed to have net metering, true net metering in the state, but now that we have such high concentration of residential rooftop solar, they have to change how they do it. The grid can't handle all the backflow of power going onto the grid and then just not having enough power there to deliver to the client during peak times. And so once too much solar happens, they end up transitioning to what's called net billing, and they start giving you a certain price per kilowatt that you give to them. And so here in April, it's actually a fluctuating price, but they're gonna give you around like 7-8 cents per kilowatt. Whereas right now, if it costs them 40 cents and they're selling it at 40 cents, they're gonna give you 40 cents for that kilowatt. So it's a significant decrease. And eventually it may get to the point where there's some utilities who don't even give you anything for every kilowatt that you give them. So I'm building tons and tons and tons of pain, and then I talk about the solution, and then I talk about the evolution of net metering. It's all educational. When people understand the real problem and the real need for what we're doing, it's a really easy decision for them to move forward with the program. So by the time I get to this part in my presentation, I hopefully have built enough pain and showed them enough value in solar for them to feel comfortable moving forward with me. I haven't even talked about price yet. I haven't even done any of that. By the time I talk about price, it's like, okay, we're ready to move forward here. When you guys are doing your Sunrun proposals, by the raise of hands, how many people do an option close? One guy. Yeah. So you guys clearly don't need to, because it's working. Whatever you're doing is working. But one thing that I would maybe encourage you to try is an option close with the Sunrun pricing. We do in Arizona, we don't have as big of a disparity between what we can sell at. You know, here you can sell way up high and way down low. We don't have that luxury. But what we do is we do a flat rate and I do an escalator rate. I give the customer an option. But I make sure that my flat rate and my escalator rate is the same EPC, same PPW. So I don't really care which one they choose, but it gives them an option to choose which one they want. And it's a really, really good segue into which program, me moving forward with the program.
So you're saying you're doing it,
Or option 3, keep paying your utility company.
Yeah, hey, you have 3 options. Keep paying them. This price is fixed for 25 years. This price is cheaper and has a 2.9 fixed annual increase.
you're
Which
talking about an
do you
option
want?
close within the escalator, non-escalator with the Sunrun.
You got it.
I mean, I've been doing option closes with the loan and Sunrun
Yeah,
since I've been here with Solar Pros.
got it.
But
In my opinion, having them decide between a loan and a lease, that's a hard decision
Sure.
to make. I mean, I wouldn't know what I want. Because a customer is gonna buy what you sell. It's like for
I'm
3
fine
years
with
of
that.
my solar career, I was only doing Sunrun, I was only doing the lease. I didn't even know a purchase. And they bought, and they bought, and they bought, and they bought. And then I got opened up to a purchase, and I was like, oh, this is great. And they started buying my purchases.
that's what happened to me.
And then I switched back, and then I did about 50-50, and now I'm all Sunrun again, and your customers are gonna buy whatever product you're putting out there.
Well, now Dustin, by doing that, you don't think that maybe now they're gonna wanna know more, like, okay, well, how much exactly would they go up every year? Or like, if I do 2.9%, how much would it be exactly at the end of the 25 years? How much am I gonna be paying?
Yeah, so what I do, here's what I do, check this out. I mean, education is everything. I'm not trying to hide them anything, because in the contract, I think it's page 26, it has a table of exactly what their price is gonna be anyways.
Yeah.
And you have to sign off on that, so unless you're just like clicking through real quick with them, like, they need to see that anyways. And so I'm not scared of that, because we know the history of the utility company. I mean, they're raising over the last 4 years that price throughout that graph, 10, 11, 12% over the last 4 years. So what I do is I say, hey, look, your price today is $129, but my price is gonna go up by $3.74. So year 2, year 3, what's your price right now, ma'am? Oh, you're at 300? Okay. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. You're gonna be dead by then. Your price still is $80 under what you're paying right now to the utility company. So most people like this option, ma'am, because you're still gonna be much lower. And even though it has a fixed 2.9 annual increase, you can map out exactly what your price is gonna be. We've locked in our rate, even though it has that escalator. So it's just education and kind of positioning it in a good way. But that's really helpful, being able to like calculate the numbers. Even when I'm on the doorstep, I'm like, hey, what are you paying for price for power right now? They're like, I don't know. Like, what was your bill last month? Go grab it for me. And I just, even though it says it on there, when you can pull out your calculator, it just makes you look like a freaking wizard, you know? And they trust you. Okay, so as soon as I do my option close,
Dustin, what's the EPC rates you need to, do you have it down to what EPC you need to sell them at for the escalator, for you to still make money on the escalator versus, because my understanding is that there was always like, you either make money or you don't make money. based on how we would,
Flat rate or escalator rate?
yeah, so,
I mean, here in California, to get that same price, you're probably gonna need like 6 cent difference. We can go in there and we can price a
Okay.
couple things. But if you're gonna sell a 20 cent escalator, you're probably gonna need to sell a 26 cent flat rate.
non-escalator to make
Yeah.
the same,
Exactly. But I like giving them options, you know? Most of the time they see that higher price and they're like, I want the cheaper price. I'm gonna go with the escalator.
so you're doing an option of the non-escalator and escalator with most of the club?
Every customer.
Really? That's
Yep.
interesting, okay.
Yep. And then in Splat or in Salesforce, you can toggle between the two options. So it's not like you have to like
Sure.
spend lots of time. You wanna get pretty quick at it so that you can just show them what it is. And then as soon as they say, hey, I like the escalator, I say, that's honestly what I would have chosen to. And I click checkout. And just move forward. So, once I establish which option they're gonna choose, then I come here. So I've already sold them. I sold them before I talked about price, and then I get the price, I give them an option close, and they easily let me move forward on whichever price makes most sense. And then by here, I just talk about our process. I'm a big advocate of under-promising and over-delivering. I think that's one of the biggest problems in the sales space is too many people over-promise and under-deliver. Customers are happy as long as their expectations are met. So I'm a real estate agent in Arizona as well, and one thing that I see in solar and real estate agents is, first off, agents have no idea how solar works. But secondly, most of the time, customers just were overpromised. They don't understand. So anytime I'm on a doorstep and I have the opportunity to like educate a client, I take the time to do that because I think the awareness and what it is, it's super important. It helps us. So if I can help a frustrated client understand, they're not frustrated anymore. It's all an understanding and expectations thing. So this is kind of where I try to under-promise and over-deliver. So I talk about time frames. You know, obviously we all want to get paid fast. Customer wants glass on the roof fast, but I'll under-promise all day long. So I say, hey, look, good news is today, we'll get moving forward. We'll sign some docs. Within a couple days, we'll have a site surveyor come out and evaluate the property. They'll get up there, they'll drill some stuff, bang some hammers. It's usually pretty quick. Within a couple days, we have our engineering team take care of the final design. That's where they'll put the plans together and we'll get like, you know, how it's all gonna look. And we'll submit those plans to the city for permits. Obviously, we're jumping through all the hoops. It is pretty complicated, but we're doing everything for you guys, so it's nothing that you have to do. Once the plans come back and we're approved, we can actually come out and we can put the panels up on the roof. As soon as that's done, city comes out, they kind of drag their feet, but it is what it is. We'll get it inspected. About 3-4 weeks later, the utility company comes out, puts on the meter, and then that same day you can turn your system on. So your first payment isn't for 30 days after this step here. So we ask for nothing out of your guys' pocket. Now, to get from here to here, it's like a 4.5 month process. So we have quite a bit of time in the meantime. So I can assume you guys want to do some shopping, talk to your neighbors, all that good stuff. I would recommend that. But what we'll do is we'll start the process today. And then if you have any questions along the process, just know you can reach out to me and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Are both you guys on title or is it just you? Oh, it's just you? Okay. How do you spell your name again? And I'll start doing the docs for credit check. So any questions about that process? Yes.
Something that I actually used yesterday that I liked, like from Spencer's thing, is I said, hey, if you get approved, so
Yeah.
like, I feel like in the first step, like telling the enrollment, they're like, hey, all we're gonna do is just submit for the application, see if you get approved, and literally the wife right after was that, well, how do we know if we get approved?
Yeah.
And then it was just like a,
They're chasing them.
yeah, they-
let me in.
yeah, they
Love
wanted it,
that.
you know, and
Please,
instead of like,
please.
hey, we're gonna like sign some
It's gonna
docs and like
cost
get
you.
this done, you know, it was like, I was like, dang, that actually worked.
That's it.
Like, that's it.
People want what they can't have.
Yes.
Every single time. So, yeah, no, that's great strategy. I like that a lot. So, a couple other things. Post-sale. So, I was talking to some of you earlier. A lot of struggles that people have in the industry is they'll go sign an account, but there's no follow-through. Spence is probably one of the big advocates of like taking care of your customers. I personally don't show up to many customers' accounts ever. I know you guys show up at like site survey sometimes and sometimes at install. That's freaking awesome. Keep doing that. But one of the biggest problems is if a customer cancels or something like that, there's no follow through there. Most sales reps just kind of let that deal fall off and they go out and get another deal. What I've noticed is like 9 times out of 10, you could save the customer just by showing up. And another thing that I've noticed is most of the time, they've moved forward with another company and they're going solar without you. And it's a $5 difference. Showing up, getting in front of them, you obviously have to push through some of those concerns. A lot of times they'll lie to you. Get in the house, get face to face with the client. Don't try to save them over the phone, don't text them, just show back up. And it brings a lot of good things your way. Let's see here. So,
You're showing him that presentation, Dustin, in the house?
yes.
That
So
same
that's
exact
kind of my
slide deck?
presentation. I'm gonna have Will rebrand it. I already, did you get it, Will? You want the actual file though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you rebrand it with Freedom, or would you rebrand it with Solar?
Freedom,
Pro?
Solar Pros, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
So that's what I use. A lot of other sales guys, it's just, the point is, it's not what I'm using. The point is I have a process, I have a flow.
You're saying.
I know where I'm breaking in my flow and I can go in and fix that. But if you don't know what that process looks like when you're getting into a house, you'll get some deals, but you're just not gonna get a lot of deals. You just don't have a process in place. And so if you don't have a process, find one, get one, shadow somebody, get in the house with somebody, see what they're doing, see what they're saying, and you'll come to realize they're saying almost the same thing every single time. They're just personalizing it to the client and building some rapport.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it helps a ton with your confidence and your direction. A lot of times customers will ask questions that are like way off base or like super sidetracked, right? Like, they'll get in deep, dark with batteries and how that works, or, you know, they'll ask weird questions, and if you don't have a pre-designated path already, you'll lose control of the whole scenario, going off on wild tangents.
Yeah.
So this just helps you, and it also helps because you should be the professional. The customer, this is their first time going solar, right? Maybe sometimes second time, but you know, typically it's their first time. You've done this 100 times, right? Or should feel like you've done it 100 times, right? That's the idea, is you should feel like this is just a normal process. So that's why you need to control the process. If you haven't already made one, super easy. I mean, for lunch today, write down the bullet points that you want to make, right? Just on a notepad or something, and then practice hitting those topics, right? Making that part of your natural flow, and it'll carry you all the way to close, right? And and it's just super natural, and the customer feels like, oh, this is the next step.
Yep.
Because naturally that's so.
And it can be
comfortable.
clunky. Your process at first can be clunky, and that's
Yeah.
okay. It's a starting point. You know what you're doing when you're going in there, and you'll refine it as time goes on. And you'll get rid of those things that are making it clunky, and you'll take things from other people that you're learning. Last thing I want to go over real quick is KPIs. So how many of us are getting on the doors every day? Like, do we know what KPIs are? Who knows KPIs?
Key performance indicators.
Let's go. What are your KPIs for door knocking on a weekly basis? Let's break it down to the week.
I used to try to do, I mean, this may seem ridiculous, but 20 pitches, 5 accounts created, and 2 closes.
Cool.
So on a daily, I try to do 5 pitches a day. Like, these are good pitches,
Yeah.
not talking to 5 people, but like
Yep.
pitches. I'd always try to create at least 1 account a day. That was my goal, and then
I love it.
close 2 a week.
How many of us, who else has some KPIs that they're tracking?
Similar to like Bryce, mine's like, my goal is always to get like 5 pitches, have great conversations.
Cool.
Because it's like, when I come back to that event tomorrow, it's like, it's warmer leads, right? So, like, my goal is to go back to that house again. I'm not gonna, the moment I leave that house, if I like just burn that door, don't go back, so there's gonna be another house. I mean,
Right.
they're eventually gonna have solar with me or without me. So
Right.
I wanna be,
Great
I wanna
attitude,
be the guy that gets them, because if I miss the decision maker, it's like, yeah, but my goal is always to count a day, 5 pitches,
Yeah.
always.
So when I see somebody lacking in sales, lacking in solar, the first thing I look at is their schedule. What does your schedule look like? Do you have a schedule? Do you know what your schedule is every day? Are you sticking to the schedule? Like, that's the first thing I look at. If you're not seeing success in solar yet, nail down a schedule and stick to it, and good things will happen. And then once you want to take your sales to the next level, then find out what your KPIs are. Like where do you, what is your batting average? Yours is gonna be less than mine, mine's gonna be less than yours, but where is your batting average? And then once you know where that is, now as you track it, when performance is measured, performance improves. But I think a lot of time we're not measuring our performance and we just don't know. We're just kind of going out, and that's what I think drives lack of motivation, is just not knowing what we're doing, where we're going. And so if we can figure out what those, so let's first nail down a schedule, then nail down what our key performance indicators are. I think that's a good starting point. Like we probably all want to shoot for at least 2 deals closed per week, right? Some of us might be happy with 1. Phil.
You go to my session,
But yeah, so that's a really good starting point. So having 20 good conversations per week, that's 5 per day if you're working only 4 days. But no, starting there, going for 2 closes. So a couple things that I would track is conversations are great. Doors knocked, I think, is a really simple way to track what you're doing. How many doors are you knocking every day? So most of our guys in Arizona, if we're not on a blitz or anything, we're trying to get 250 doors knocked per week, which is 50 doors a day. Not a lot of doors.
That's a lot for us.
Wait, do you count knocks that doors that only
Just
answer,
knocks.
or just
Knock 'em.
Oh,
just run to the neighborhood?
that's easy then.
Who keeps knocking my door?
You're gonna go to an apartment complex.
Running down hotels.
20 minutes later, I'm done.
But 250 doors knocked, what we've noticed is that on a brand new guy coming in, if he just knocks 250 doors per week, he's going to get 2 deals closed. And how that breaks down is it's 250 doors knocked. And that's obviously, you're knocking smart. You're not just going to necessarily every single house. Like, go see signs of life. You're in the same neighborhood for quite some time. So I like how Sunrun, how they previously kept you to an area, because area management is so important. And most people will blow through territory just by knocking. But I think going where you feel confident, I think, is super important as well. So 250 doors knocked is going to lead to 20 potential customers. Those are good conversations, kind of like what Bryce was saying. Those are people you talk to, they showed interest, but they just wouldn't set up an appointment. I took notes on Volt. I took really good notes that they drive a white car. The husband's the decision maker. He works in the oil fields. And now that potential customer, if you're tracking this and you're taking really good notes and you know what your KPIs are, now every single week I have 20 people. That leads to 80 people per month that I had a really good conversation with that just wouldn't set up an appointment. 80 people per month times 12. I have 1,000 people of really good people in 1 year that I had a really solid conversation with. That now I'm building my network, I'm building my business. I don't remember how many I installed last year, but I did pretty well, not as good as Spencer. And most of my business was repeat clients, referrals. And so 20 potential customers is gonna lead to about 8 to 10 sit downs, like customers that are supposed to sit down with you. Usually half of those will actually sit down, so let's say 4 or 5 of them actually sit down. And then you're gonna, as a new closer, you're gonna convert about 2 of them. Maybe 1 of them didn't qualify, 2 of them signed, 1 of them said not right now. So that's kind of a breakdown of basic KPIs. If you don't know what yours are, stick to those, and then hopefully your conversion gets better than that as time goes on. But get a schedule, find out what your KPIs are, and start measuring what those numbers look like, and you'll see some improvement big time every single day. So that's all I got.
Love it.